When high-ranking priests within the Vatican start admitting that they couldn't allow Pope Francis to speak freely, you know something's deeply wrong. The whispers inside the Holy See have become too loud to ignore. But what are they really hiding? And why has the Pope, the head of the Catholic Church, been deliberately silenced? The Vatican, one of the most secretive and powerful institutions in the world, is no stranger to controversy. But recent statements made by senior clergy are sending shockwaves across the globe. For the first time, insiders are admitting that Pope Francis has often been blocked from making unscripted remarks, especially when it comes to the most sensitive issues, from abuse scandals to financial corruption.
The Catholic Church, with over 1 billion followers, is the largest branch of Christianity. And its home is Vatican City, in the center of Rome.
The history of the Vatican began in the 4th century AD when Constantine built the first Christian basilica on the site of what was believed to be the burial place of St. Peter, Jesus' first martyr. The new basilica, the Sistine Chapel, and the Papal Palace.
But the Vatican has also become a hotbed of conspiracy theories for one simple reason. Securely housed within is the Vatican Apostolic Archive, known until recently as the Vatican Secret Archive.
Over the past year, tension within the Vatican walls has grown. Pope Francis, known for his progressive views, has repeatedly clashed with traditionalists within the Church. And according to leaked reports and testimonies, there have been multiple occasions where those closest to him actively intervened to prevent him from making public comments. Francis has never been a typical pope. Since taking the papal office in 2013, he's pushed the Catholic Church in a more inclusive direction, speaking out on LGBTQ+ rights, climate change, and global inequality. But not everyone inside the Vatican agrees with him.
In dramatic scenes of pouring rain and a vacant St. Peter's Square, Pope Francis gave an extraordinary blessing to the city and to the world. The March 27th blessing, Urbi et Orbi, typically given only after the election of a new pope and at Christmas and Easter, was the Pope's response to the coronavirus pandemic. Speaking in the empty square, but with countless watching around the world via live stream, the Pope compared the world's situation to that of Jesus' disciples when, in the Gospel of Mark, they find themselves, frightened for their lives, in a boat on a stormy sea of Galilee.
In fact, several cardinals have formed what many describe as an internal resistance, aimed at limiting his influence. These individuals argue that Pope Francis is putting centuries of doctrine at risk. And when he's tried to address controversial issues, like the cover-up of abuse cases in Europe and Latin America, his speeches have allegedly been revised, delayed, or outright canceled. One of the most telling moments came during a planned address about the Church's response to historical abuse. According to Vatican insiders, Francis wanted to issue a bold, heartfelt apology, naming bishops who failed to act and calling for immediate reforms. But on the morning of the event, he was handed a heavily edited version of his own speech.
The pontiff set the agenda with a piece of paper, 21 proposals, including establishing worldwide protocols for handling accusations against bishops, involving lay experts in investigations, and developing rules for screening seminarians. Many of the points are familiar to priests in America, where similar rules were imposed nearly 2 decades ago. In the U.S., nearly 7,000 clerics have been accused of sexually abusing minors since 1950.
He wasn't allowed to name names. He wasn't allowed to speak about the victims in personal terms. One priest admitted anonymously, "We couldn't let him talk. It would have torn the institution apart."
And developing rules for screening seminarians. Many of the points are familiar to priests in America, where similar rules were imposed nearly 2 decades ago.
What I'm hoping is that some of the things that we've very slowly learned in the United States.
This censorship left many inside and outside the Church outraged. Survivors groups who had traveled to Rome expecting a moment of reckoning instead got a carefully controlled PR statement. far from the direct and compassionate words Pope Francis had prepared. But the silencing isn't limited to abuse scandals. Pope Francis has also tried to bring transparency to the Vatican Bank, a financial institution long accused of laundering money and hiding criminal activity.
Points are familiar to priests in America, where similar rules were imposed nearly 2 decades ago.
What I'm hoping is that some of the things that we've very slowly learned in the United States.
In 2021, he launched a full investigation into mismanaged funds, especially regarding a $200 million real estate deal in London that raised global eyebrows. His efforts were met with fierce resistance. Several high-ranking officials within the Secretariat of State pushed back, arguing that Francis was overstepping. Internal memos show that public discussions on the case were deliberately suppressed, and yet Pope Francis persisted, eventually allowing the first trial of a cardinal in Vatican history. But many believe that had he been allowed to speak freely from the start, the rot in the system could have been exposed much earlier. Another disturbing pattern emerged during Pope Francis's recent health scares. When he was hospitalized in 2023, Vatican spokespeople insisted he was recovering well, even as leaked footage suggested otherwise. It was later revealed that several of his intended public appearances had been canceled, not just because of his condition, but because of what he had planned to say. One unnamed cleric told reporters, "Every time he's unscripted, there's a panic inside.